My name is Jim Moore. I'm with Fairway Independent Mortgage Corporation, or simply Fairway Mortgage. We are a mortgage bank, and for those not familiar with mortgage bank terminology, what that means is we have in-house underwriting, in-house funding. So we take your client from point A to funding, meaning that if there's ever an issue with underwriting or ever an issue with funding, we're going to take care of it because it is in-house. I've been in real estate since 1988. Started out as a real estate certified appraiser in the state of Pennsylvania. 1999, I moved into the financial aspect for mortgage lending. I've been in lending since that time, moved to Houston in 2003, and started with Fairway Mortgage in 2004, January of 2004. So I've been with the same company that was incorporated in 1996. Our corporate office is based out of Madison, Wisconsin, and our funding department and ops department in Texas is in Plano, Texas. What I think would differentiate us, Fairway, from maybe other lenders or brokers that you may have done business with is we do have a separate purchase division, and that purchase division guarantees that you're going to close on time or prior to your contract date, because all purchase contracts take priority. So if you do have a contract set to close on a certain date, we're going to close it on that date. We're also going to fund it on that date. We send the wires out at least the night before closing. The documents go to the title company so that you have your final HUD at least 48 hours prior to closing, so that you're not at closing wondering what are we getting money today. With Fairway, we have what's called a team of 4, so that if there's ever a question with regards to a file, we have at least 4 people that will jump on that file and respond to it. If there's ever an underwriting question prior to your client even getting to contract, I have a direct connect with our in-house underwriting so we can get your questions answered. I think with this market, when you're working with your clients, one thing that's really important is to kind of get an idea of where they are credit-wise, because credit is a big issue with financing. Not that you can't get financing because there's money available, but if you know their credit ahead of time, or at least what's on their credit, at least you're ahead of the game. And if there are issues with credit, you know that there are credit resources that you can work with to improve credit. One product that's probably real specialized is VA mortgages. If you're working with a client, one thing you always want to ask them first and foremost, are you a veteran? Is your spouse a veteran? They've served our country, and we want to very much serve them well as well. Another product that's great for our clients is FHA financing. Well, let me back up. VA financing is 100% financing. So here's an opportunity to help your buyers get into a home with really no money out of their pocket. That seller can also pay up to 4% towards their closing costs. FHA financing is a 3.5% down program where the seller can contribute up to 6% towards closing, which is huge. We see it all the time where our buyers can pretty much come to closing with just their down payment money. Again, going back to who Fairway Mortgage is, as far as a company, the size, we've funded over $4 billion the past 3 years on average. And with regards to getting money to closing, our money will be at your closing the day before your closing, so that you're guaranteed to close on time. If there's any other questions, I'm open for questions.
There you go. Great, definitely. And Jim's exactly right. The mortgage industry is very, I would like to use the word eclectic. It's very interesting these days, but it all starts with making sure that you qualify, and it does start with credit. I mean, more than ever, the ingredients of your credit report is very important in regards to trade lines, your FICO score number, being able to hit that magic number, which is what these days, about 620, 640?
640 is your magic number. Some lenders are still at 620, but they're going up. VA has just recently increased to 640. Now the VA and FHA may allow a lower score, but you've got to be careful with what they call lender overlays, where the lender will put an overlay on top of what maybe VA or FHA or even conventional financing will permit. And you've got to be very careful with that, because some lenders, because of risk, will put their extra layers of protection on their underwriting guidelines.
Good information, good information. Anybody have any questions? Anybody want to pose a question as far as, some thoughts about mortgage, financing? Any questions?
Well, the one thing that people have asked me recently, since we have foreclosures, if after 3 years, then they are a buyer again, if they have kept good credits since the foreclosure and not had anything negative.
Right.
So do they become a first-time buyer again?
On the 3
That's
years.
what people would like to know.
Yeah, on the 3 years, they'll be considered a first-time home buyer. But it is important to reestablish the credit.
Right.
And a lot of times a person thinks that they can't establish credit when they've gone through, say, a foreclosure, but it's really not that difficult. And again, if you work with a credit repair company, you'll be further ahead. But secured credit cards are a great source to establish credit, and there are numerous ways to do it. Another way to do it is furniture companies or even your local bank. Do small, say, installment loans with the local bank. And it's really not the amount that you borrow, it's the payment history. Mm-hmm. So if all your borrower would go to, say, their local bank and borrow $300 and pay it off on $15 increments, 6 months later, do another, say, $500 installment loan, and do the secured credit cards at maybe a $200 limit, you're establishing credit. So, but it's the knowledge that people need to empower them. But as Bobby said at the very beginning, I think the key with whether you're new to real estate or you're seasoned veteran in real estate is working with the team, because together we're better. I need you just as much as you need me, just as much as I need Joe, to help our buyers get into their homes, because that buyer then becomes a client for life. And that's really what you want.
Exactly. One more question. Yes, ma'am.
Let's say for like a first-time buyer, they're in the 500s, mid 500s or whatever, and you need to start repairing that credit. About how long will it take when you're looking at something like that? How long will it take before they can actually go ahead and secure it?
Here's the answer you'll hate to hear, and it's in the very, after you go past the story of Harry Steen's, the very next page discusses that. We know that most customers come to us because they want their score to go up. We're not blind to that fact. It's illegal in my industry for me to promise that I can delete anything, that I can even increase a single point, or give any intimation of a timeline or otherwise. It's illegal. Now, you'll see it all the time, right? We're pretty hardcore about changing the industry and bringing some credibility and legitimacy to the industry and that type of thing. And part of that is telling the customer, I know you're hiring me to make your score go up, but that's really not why you're hiring me. You're hiring me to make sure that everything is accurately reported. That's the difference. I don't delete anything. There's a little over 300 laws that govern how the credit bureaus and the creditors are required to report the information. And it has to be 100% accurate, 100% verifiable within the time frames that they're allowed to report it. And if it's not any of that, it has to be removed. So I'm going through that process and checking. So for one person, if their situation was that there was a lot of misinformation, a lot of inaccurate information, I've seen people score go up 150 points in as little as a month, right? I've also seen people that I work on for 6 months that maybe only experience 20, 30 points of movement, because everything verifies and everything checks out and everything's accurate. So I know that, and you know that that's why they're coming to me, is they want their score to go up, but we really try to get their mind set properly on what they're really hiring us to do, is to make sure that everything is accurate. And good or bad, the system's broke in a kind of a big way, in that our average is 70%, right? 7 out of 10 items that we request proof or verification of end up being inaccurate, unverifiable, or outside of the time frames. So there's definitely a problem, and there's definitely a need for a reputable, legitimate, legal approach to making sure the stuff is accurate. So, having said all of that,
Hey Joe, can I interject one
Sure.
thing? Because that's a great point. But in addition to that credit, what we're seeing as far as underwriting is a lot of times a person will dispute their credit report. Whenever there's the word dispute on a credit report, that stops everything. So if that client is disputing credit, you've got to make sure the terminology of dispute is removed from that credit report. Otherwise, we can't close.
Or even to
Okay.
add to that, make sure that you're done disputing prior to applying for a mortgage.
Correct.
That's the biggest thing, because the thing is as you're going through this process right here, finish the credit repair process. And then we need to come to Jim. Allow Jim to do a repull, to be able to look and sweep the credit report, make sure that everything that Joe can improve my credit was seeking to make accurate has been done. And then from that point, now all of a sudden we can proceed with the mortgage. Now, is that just an FHA thing, or is that a conventional thing, or both?
That's everything.
Okay, gotcha.
So no disputes on credit reports, and if they are, it's just a matter of getting with that creditor to remove that dispute. If it's a collection, that might mean you might have to negotiate to pay that collection. And so just keep that in mind. But you'll know all these things. You're not going to be the credit expert. That's why there are people on the team that can help your borrowers get into that home. It may not happen today, like I tell my borrowers, just because it's a no today doesn't mean that it's a no tomorrow, because it can certainly be a yes for them. So the key is to continue to stay and drip on your client, offer them good content, good information, and great service, and you'll be on your way to making money in real estate, because that's why we're here, right?
Exactly.